At 17, Ariadna discovered what Stoicism never teaches you: the wind beneath her skates. When Ariadna was barely 6 years old, life already seemed made of small races. Her mother used to wake her up early, even on Sundays, because the girl would always rise before the sun to put on her worn-out skates and head to the park. They were old skates inherited from a cousin, with a broken strap her father had fixed using a makeshift piece of leather, but Ariadna didn't care. When she skated, nothing else existed. The park where she trained wasn't large, but it had a perfectly smooth concrete path that allowed her to reach a speed that, for her age, was almost unbelievable. Her father would sit on the usual bench under a large tree that gave shade even on the hottest days. He was a quiet man, almost reserved, but every so often he would say phrases that Ariadna would remember forever. Phrases that didn't seem important at the time, but later would become her philosophy of life. The oldest of them all was this: "Don't skate to run away, skate to find yourself." Ariadna didn't fully understand the phrase, but she knew it made her feel light, as if what she was doing had a greater purpose. Over the years, she began to develop a natural talent for speed. At 8, she was already competing in small children's races. At 10, she was known at school as the fastest girl. At 12, she began formal training. Coach Ramirez was her first real guide in the competitive world. He was a tough man, with a raspy voice and a firm character. Many children quit his training because they considered it too demanding, but Ariadna endured everything. When Ramirez shouted, "One more lap! Don't give up!" the girl would clench her teeth and keep going. He used to say a phrase she memorized forever: "Talent gives you the start, but discipline gives you the finish." Years of training shaped in her a mixture of technique, strength, and serenity that made her stand out among other skaters. She was known as the shadow of the wind, because when she accelerated it seemed as if she didn't touch the ground. At 17, after miles of training, hundreds of falls, and countless early mornings, Ariadna achieved what she had dreamed of for so long. She qualified for the Continental Championship, an event that brought together the best junior skaters on the continent. It was her moment. Her whole life seemed to be pushing her toward that competition. Her father hugged her like never before. Her mother cried with emotion. Ramirez smiled for the first time in months. But fate, which had so often accompanied her, decided to place before her the hardest test of all. 1 week before the trip, during a routine practice, an accident occurred that would change her life forever. A young novice skater lost control on a tight curve and crossed into Ariadna's lane. She didn't have time to brake. The impact was brutal. She was thrown several feet and landed hard on her left leg. The sound of the fracture was so dry, so final, that everyone present froze. The screams came seconds later. Coach Ramirez ran toward her in desperation. Ariadna tried to stand, but her leg wouldn't respond. A sharp, unbearable pain shot through her entire body. Through tears and confusion, she only managed to say, "I'm going to be able to compete." But the answer came hours later in the hospital room with a devastating diagnosis: double fracture, compromised ligaments, severe tissue damage. The doctor was clear: "Your recovery will be long. We don't know if you will compete again at your previous level." Those words were a blow harder than the fall itself. The dream she had built for more than 10 years collapsed in an instant. That night Ariadna cried until she fell asleep. She cried for the lost race, for the pain, for the fear, for the feeling that fate had taken everything from her. Her mother tried to comfort her, but nothing calmed her soul. Her father, silent as always, sat beside her when everyone had fallen asleep and told her the phrase that would become her salvation. "Ariadna, remember what the Stoics teach. Don't control what happens to you, control what you do with what happens to you." That sentence remained engraved in her mind like a faint spark in the middle of darkness. The next day she decided to start writing in a notebook. She wrote down 3 things that did depend on her: her effort, her discipline, her attitude. And so began the war against pain and hopelessness. Rehabilitation was torture. Every movement hurt. Every attempt to bend her knee was a battle. There were days when she wanted to quit, days when she screamed in frustration, days when she cursed the accident. But there were also days when she remembered Stoic philosophy. Days when she understood that life is not what happens to you, but what you decide to do with it. Little by little, her body began to respond. Her leg moved again. Her knee regained strength. The ligaments, though fragile, stabilized. After 8 months, she put her skates back on. It was an almost sacred moment. She was trembling. She felt insecure, vulnerable, terrified. But she gave the first push. She moved forward 2 meters, then 5, then 10. She wasn't fast, she wasn't strong, but she was moving forward, and that was enough. 1 year later, she competed again. She didn't win or even come close, but she finished the race crying with happiness. It was her rebirth. The 2 years that followed were the hardest and the most beautiful of her life. She trained like never before. She studied Stoic philosophy to keep her mind firm. She practiced in rain, sun, and cold. She learned to master fear, to accept uncertainty, to control her emotions. People began to see her as an example of resilience. And then the day arrived. The Continental Championship. Another final. The track full, the crowd expectant, her heart racing. The adult Ariadna, now with visible and invisible scars, took her position at the starting line. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and said to herself, "The person who masters their mind does not need to master the world." The gunshot marked the start. Ariadna burst forward with a speed that surprised everyone. It was as if her soul had decided to run outside her body. Every curve was a test, every straightaway a declaration. In the final meters, while the whole world was shouting, she remembered the phrase from her childhood, "Skate to find yourself," and crossed the finish line first. The stadium exploded. Ariadna fell to her knees. She cried without trying to hide it. She had won. But what she was truly celebrating was having defeated her pain, her fear, her tragedy. Years later, turned into a legend, she decided to retire and dedicate herself to teaching. She created a skating school founded on discipline, love, technique, and Stoic philosophy. There, she didn't just train bodies, she trained minds. She taught children to control their emotions, to accept adversity, to grow with purpose. Many of her students became champions, but what moved her most was shaping strong human beings. One day, in an interview, she was asked what her greatest achievement had been. Ariadna looked out the window where dozens of children skated under the light of the sunset and said, "My greatest achievement is not having won a medal. It is having learned that the fall does not define you. What defines you is the decision to get back up." And so the girl who had once been broken became the teacher who taught others to fly on wheels. The wind remained her companion, her guide, her inner music. But now she no longer ran for herself. She ran for everyone who needed to see that even what seems like the end can become the greatest beginning of your life. If you're interested in Stoicism, personal growth, and life stories, then subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any video. And don't forget to follow us on all our social media platforms to stay connected with our community. Join the family of Stoic Stories.